Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 28th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it had, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. The next 2000s classic that I wanted to share my love for is, in my opinion, a great example of a commercially viable, successful album that was still huge in the streets. Despite what a lot of Drake fans like to think, Pusha T was not some underground, unheard of rapper that nobody really knew of until his beef with Drake. Honestly, I'd be a bit embarrassed to go around publicly admitting you don't know songs like Grindin' or Mr. Me Too, or at least acting like that's anyone's fault except your own. But if you're a little younger and maybe just aren't familiar with these songs, they were a couple of the biggest hits by game-changing Virginia duo Clipse. As I referenced, Pusha T was one half of this legendary outfit, but the other half was his just as talented brother No Malice, formerly known as Malice. While they've come together a couple times in recent years, or at least ones that I can think of on that Jesus is King album, Clipse initially ended due to Malice dedicating himself to Christianity, and from his view, many people got killed listening to their music, which was a large part of the rebirth as No Malice. If you're familiar with the relentless issues plaguing the duo during their career, even as someone who personally isn't religious, I completely understand and respect his decision. In 2009, there was a massive drug raid around the Re-Up Gang inner circle, with their former manager getting slapped with a 32-year sentence for drug ring-related charges. When you hear No Malice talk about the unimaginable fear of his brother going away next, it's pretty understandable why he prefers to distance himself from the old Clipse music. But this is one of those weird double-edged swords with music where I'd be lying if I said the fact there was truth to the activities going on here doesn't make it slightly more appealing and authentic than someone who gets proven is never touching a drug in their life. I feel a bit shitty about it because there's people behind bars for these things, and I'm sitting here totally safe from that reality going, ooh, that sounded so cool. But honestly, I feel like there isn't much difference between that and any mob movie or show. These people not following the rules of society is what makes it somewhat alluring to the average everyman, and it's why anti-heroes are such a reoccurring staple of beloved movies, shows, and music. So I feel like when you listen to any Clipse album, you kind of have to put on a similar mindset to if you were watching Scarface or The Sopranos. I feel like it's a bit dumb to act like just because these topics are in certain shows, movies, or music that means they're being endorsed. That's something I really feel like only gets said about music, specifically rap music. Clipse isn't for children. The appeal behind their music isn't, oh wow, they're talking about drugs, it's so cool. If they had drug talk but didn't have these interesting voices and sharp pens, it wouldn't have resulted in the movement that it did. And if there's one thing Push and Malice definitely had, it was sharp pens. While it can take a little bit of time for a new fan to tell the brothers apart, due to their similar vocal tones, they both are insanely clever and practiced MCs. The chemistry they have is something that can really only come from real blood brothers, and I get the impression that they would push each other to be the best MCs they could be. But of course, you really can't talk about the movement Clipse created without mentioning the Neptunes, which I probably have already gone too long without bringing up since they were such an essential part to the sound. If you don't know the Neptunes, they were the steam production duo consisting of Pharrell Williams and Chad Hugo. Pharrell is another one of those guys where I could see a lot of 12-year-olds thinking he's just the happy guy and that was his claim to fame. In reality, him and Chad were pivotal in helping Clipse turn Virginia Beach into a hot spot for hip-hop. Even if you don't think you know the Neptunes, you without a shadow of a doubt know their work because they produced for megastars like Beyonce, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Nelly, Ludacris, T.I., Gwen Stefani, Jay-Z, and Snoop Dogg. And you also can't forget ODB, and that's hardly making a dent. But while the roster of hit songs they have can hardly be rivaled, my favorite work they did has to be the stuff with Clipse, especially their first two albums, Lord Willin' and Hell Hath No Fury. While the latter is brought up a bit more often than the debut, it isn't because Lord Willin' isn't a fantastic project. It's more because their second album took the best elements of the first one, polished them up, and honed them through nearly 5 years of growth and experience. But while Hell Hath No Fury had a more lavish, fully fleshed out sound, songs off Lord Willin' like Intro, Grindin', and Comedy Central have a raw and grimy feel that can only come from hungry MCs on a debut. But while Pharrell and Chad had more than shown their instrumental prowess on the debut, in my opinion, Hell Hath No Fury has the best beats out of any fully produced Neptunes album. Pharrell is not someone who pops up on songs because he's trying to get clout or be like, look at me, I'm in the song too. Pretty much anytime he provides a hook, a verse, or even just background vocals on here, it elevates the given track, and you can really say that about pretty much any time he does that throughout his career. The sounds on here are just so lush and rich, and there's usually a killer bass line underneath the beat. You'll pretty much never find a moment on here that's skeletal or feels empty, but at the same time, the beats don't get overcooked. Any beat maker or producer knows that sometimes it isn't necessarily what you add to a beat, but what you take away. It doesn't feel like they're just taking a sample and adding preset loops on top of it until there's a bunch of sounds. Chad is an extremely talented multi-instrumentalist, and alongside Pharrell's masterful ear for production and sampling, they're able to create a distinct and memorable beat for every track on here, while ultimately still having them all fit under the same umbrella. Instrumentals like Keys Open Doors or Ride Around Shinin' are some of the dirtiest and grimiest beats the Neptunes have to their name. There's also a handful of features on here that add some diversity. Obviously Pharrell is one, but there's also appearances by the likes of Re-Up Gang, Slim Thug, Ab Liva, and Bilal. While this LP is front to back amazing songs, my three favorites on Hell Hath No Fury would have to be Mr. Me Too, Keys Open Doors, and Nightmares. However, as usual, I have to throw out a couple honorable mentions, which for this one are Mama I'm So Sorry, Womp Womp, What It Do, and Chinese New Year. Thank you for watching my 28th video. The next name I'm gonna do is a pretty big important name in hip-hop, but I'm not sure if this album is quite as famous and well known as something like Hell Hath No Fury or Late Registration. However, I also don't think it would be considered underground the way somebody like Eden or Mr. Liff would, so tune in next time to see what legend I'm talking about. Be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite moments on this landmark album by the brothers are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.